Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us, Pliant, for our MicroCom seminar. For those of you who don't know the crew, I'm Gary Rosen. I'd like to introduce Art Gonzalez. Art's going to be one of our two presenters today, along with Mark Reifus. I assume most people at this point have probably done a few of these webinars, but just to do a quick review, you have a control panel in the webinar, and there is a question section in there, and the questions will allow you to ask in real time. I will be moderating them in the background, and I'll try to bring them up to the guys to answer in real time. Some of them we may wait a bit if we're going to cover that a little bit further on. There are several handouts also that you can see in one of the drop downs on your control panel. And there will be a recording of this that'll be archived and available for later review once we're finished. So with that, let me turn it over to Art, and he's going to tell you a little bit about some of our polls we're going to be doing also.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. Yeah, we're going to, as you probably know, since you registered for this particular webinar, we're focusing on MicroCom for this webinar. Mark and I are kind of going to go back and forth between the presentation, but this time we're doing the MicroCom webinar. It's going to be a little more application focused and a little more real world, so to speak. So we're going to show you some of the features and benefits of the product, but in addition to that, hopefully kind of get your mind thinking about applications as to where MicroCom could be used. So we're going to start out by I'm going to quickly mention that there are two parts of the MicroCom line. There's the MicroCom M and the MicroCom XR. Mark's actually going to jump into some of the differences between the two different product lines. But I'm going to start out by kind of giving really a 30,000-foot overview of the technology, not a deep dive into the technology of, at an engineering level, but really kind of let you know some of the really cool things that are going on from a technology standpoint. So let's go ahead and jump right into that. So a little bit of the system overview. One thing really important to mention, and you'll probably hear this several times, is with MicroCom, there is no base station. So there's no base station required. There's basically one product for each series. So for the MicroCom M series, and also depending on the frequency, and we'll talk more about that, but there's basically one pack. And then out of that, you basically choose one of your packs as a master, and we'll talk more about that. But it also allows you to have packs that are full duplex, as well as listen-only packs. And in the case of MicroCom XR, something brand new is we'll have what's called a shared mode. So we'll get a little bit more into that as well. But the unique thing is, once again, is there's no base station. It's just the one pack. That's really all you have to worry about. Okay, so the way the topology is laid out for MicroCom, and this could be for MicroCom M or MicroCom XR. For the sake of discussion here, we're showing MicroCom M on the screen, but it is a point-to-point topology. As I mentioned, there's no base station, so all of the packs basically communicate with each other. So all of the communication goes from everybody's listening to every pack and everybody's talking to every pack in the case of a full duplex pack. So communication and data is sent directly from pack to pack. It's also structured on what's called a master pack based structure. The master becomes the sync source, and really that determines the overall system range. And we've got some slides that will actually kind of explain that, some best practices and so forth. But just keep in mind that one of the packs has to be set up as a master, and in this case, you have remaining packs 01 through 04 for full duplex packs that are basically numbered. One thing to keep in mind, since this is based on a master pack topology, the master pack should be centrally located as possible, and we'll give some examples of that. The packs must be in range of what we call the beacon. The beacon basically just sends out a sync signal to all of the packs. This is using a frequency hopping spread spectrum, so everything really has to be in sync. It's sending out basically very short pulses of digital data many times a second. And in order to do that, you have to synchronize all your packs. So the master pack is the sync source. So if the master is within range, and any of the non-master packs, anybody that's listen only or shared or full duplex, if they go out of the range of the master pack and out of the range of the beacon, of course, they won't be able to communicate. Nobody will be able to communicate to them. They won't be able to communicate with the system. However, the remaining part of the system continues to operate. As long as the master is still up and running and everybody else is still in range of that master, everything's great. Now, if the master pack battery dies or a master pack goes out of range, then no packs can communicate. So that's really the kind of the key to that whole operation for the master-based operation. Now, we do have some ways that we recommend that you operate the system. Since we are based on a master pack, you try to keep the master pack as centrally located as possible. And then keep all your remaining packs essentially symmetrical, meaning that they're in the best location based on that centralized master pack. So as you see in this particular example on the screen, you see the beacon, which is kind of simulated by this this oval, and you'll see that all the packs are within range of the master pack. And the farthest distance between any two packs, in this case, whatever that may be, these packs 1 and 4 can still communicate to each other because they're both in range of the master pack. Now we'll show you the opposite of that, and kind of what we don't recommend is you wouldn't want to have the master pack somewhere way off to the side somewhere, because at that point, if somebody, in this case, pack number 4, gets to the edge of range or goes out of range, he's not going to be able to communicate to anybody else. So in this case, the master pack is too far from the farthest pack away. So you want to keep the master somewhere centrally located if possible, even stationary if that's possible. And we do have the ability to operate one of the packs stationary if you wish to do that. Okay, we are going to continue on to talk a little bit about groups. The way the system is also set up, and this is also the case for M and XR, is we do have what's called a group function. So within the system itself, you can have multiple systems. So as we're going to show here, we're going to show 2 separate systems. It could be 2 MicroCom M systems. It could be 2 XR systems, or an M and an XR. You do have to coordinate those hopping patterns. So that's pretty much what we're doing here with this group function. It basically allows you to have small work groups. So for instance, you could have, let's say, a lighting group, and you could have a stage managers group or something like that. Now keep in mind that they won't be able to communicate to each other across the groups, but they will be able to communicate within the groups themselves. So you can have multiple groups in the same location. Really, you're just coordinating RF within those groups. You can have a co-location of up to 4 groups. And when you do that, it's basically, like I said, coordinating the frequency hopping for those 4 groups. Each separate system should be in the same group for all belts in that pack. So in our example here, the group on the top, they're all set as group 5. So every one of those packs will be set as group 5. And then at the bottom example, they're all set at group 25. Now you may be wondering, why did I use 5 and 25? And there's a reason for that. You need to have at least 10 values apart between the 2 groups. So you couldn't have group 5 and group 6 next to each other. Otherwise, you're going to have some stepping on each other. In the case of the systems we sell around the world, with the exception of the what we call Oceania version, which is Australia and New Zealand. So if you plan on going there, you can only have up to 25 groups as opposed to 52 groups. So that's the total number of groups that are on the system. All right, so now I'm gonna pass it off over to Mark, and I will let Mark now kind of cover the actual, dig in a little bit more into the products themselves. So Mark, you can go ahead and take it away.
Good morning, everybody. Hopefully I won't blow this up like I did 10 minutes before we started it this morning. So my name is Mark, and I'm Regional Sales Manager here at Pliant Technology. Let's dig into the MicroCom system. And we're starting with the MicroCom M, which is presently shipping right now. So you can get these at any of your local Pliant dealers. And it's a very economical system. It's a single channel, 900 megahertz intercom system. It is purpose built for intercom. And enter, and we're shipping here. Okay, having a problem getting these slides through, man. Sorry, guys. It's a very simple pack-to-pack operation, as we were speaking about before. And you can have, in the MicroCom M system, you can have up to 5 full duplex users and an unlimited amount of listen-only users. And one thing that's important to note about our MicroCom systems, both the M and the XR, is that any belt pack, any piece of hardware can be set up as a master. So if you have 6 MicroCom M belt packs and you normally operate them as a 5 duplex user system with 1 listen only system, you could split those apart into 2 3-user systems. And that can be done through the software menu options. It's not a hardware based denotation as to what's the master belt pack and what's not the master belt pack. That's all set up via the software. So that's a nice benefit to have if you're in a situation where you need to make a master very soon, or if you need to do something for a rental, or for any kind of a high holy day at a house of worship, or a heavier theatrical production. The talk button is latching, so it offers hands-free operation, much like a cell phone. So you push that button and you're having a bi-directional duplex conversation with your colleagues doing your job. And it's got a very high dynamic range. This, like I said earlier on, it's a purpose-built system. This was designed to be an intercom. It's not a product that could also do intercom work. This was from the giddy up set up to be an intercom system. So it's very clear, very good sounding audio on this system. It operates in this particular, we sell in the United States here the 900 megahertz band and a 2.4. 2.4 CE is available. We're compliant with CE in Europe. And we are also available in Australia in a Oceania version. It's encrypted digital, and as Art said earlier, it's frequency hopping spread spectrum, so it's constantly changing channels. It never sits on one channel and broadcasts at any given time. It's constantly changing channels. It has a proprietary set of hopping sequences. The RF is almost a set it and forget it type of a situation. It's very easy to set the system up. Once you set a couple menu functions, you're off to the races and you can do your job. There's no need to worry about in-band frequency coordination between other M systems, because once you set those groups up and get them far enough apart, it's doing that all for you. So you don't need to manually set anything other than just your groups when you're setting up these systems. And in most cases, you're not going to have any kind of problems with other 900 megahertz or 2.4 systems. It's a very small, lightweight system. It's weather resistant. This is it's a water resistant enclosure. So it can take some rain, it can take some perspiration, things of that nature. It's got a long 10-hour battery life. It operates while charging, so you can use the system while it's plugged in the wall and getting charged up, or if you're using an external USB power pack for it, like you do for your cell phone when you're traveling, you can plug one of those into this and extend your battery life and your operation time. It comes with a 2-year warranty. It's 1 year out of the box, and you register the product with us, and you gain another year of warranty. So you'll have up to 2 years once you register the product with Pliant. And it comes with some handy accessories. You have a holster that has the integrated belt clip on it. You have a neck strap if you choose to wear it around your neck while you're working. And it also comes with a micro USB cable for charging. These units can be charged with any off-the-shelf USB charging device. So we have a very nice 5 USB charging brick for the MicroCom M, and as you'll see with the XR, we have other charging options. So you can purchase our product, which is an excellent device to have. But if you're in a bind, you can charge it in your car on a USB charger from the lighter outlet. Inside of the MicroCom M, that circle's indicating what the LED indicators are for, and it's going to give you login status and battery status. And then in this next set of bullets, which are coming shortly, Went too far. Sorry about that, folks. All right. So the menu settings is what I referred to before, and this is where you go in and dig in and really set up your side tone. If you're in a duplex or listen only mode, your mic gain, your output level, and also what group you're a part of. So who you're working with. And then as you can see in the rest of the screen here, we're pointing out to you our antenna, the LCD screen, your volume buttons are on the left-hand side there. There's the USB charging connection, your headset connection. It's a dual mini 1/8" headset connector there that we use on our headsets, what we talk about later on. And we also have some other headsets that are single mini 3.5 millimeter or mini 1/8". The talk button's there with our logo on it, and then the mode button, as I pointed out before, with the power, etc. So now we are beginning to ship our brand new MicroCom XR. And the XR is a very exciting product. This also operates in 900 2.4. We'll be talking about that later. But this is a 2-channel system. It's A or B. So you can be listening and talking on A or listening or talking on B with the system. Very straightforward, simple pack-to-pack operation like the MicroCom M. You can have up to 10 duplex users on this system in the settings, or you could set it into a 5-user extended range mode, and you'll be seeing in some slides down the road here how far this guy will actually transmit. And 900 megahertz is very, very impressive. Unlimited shared user options, so you can have an unlimited amount of shared users on there. And we have a couple different types of modes with this XR system that Art's going to be discussing shortly in slides to come. So shared user option, we'll be explaining that further. Listen only, we've already spoken about with M. So if you want to be a listen only user on there, you can do that. And then the latching momentary talk button, very similar to what we have in the M. It's got an in and out of range tone. It gives you 3 beeps when you're on your way out, 2 beeps when you're registering in. RF group security code, which basically means that I have to enter a code in order to be able to join a group of people. And that group of people would be the group of intercom belt packs that I'm communicating with. And I can lock out the buttons on this device. Basically what this does is it locks out every button except your power button and your volume button. So for a volunteer environment or a student environment in a higher education or even K through 12, and in a house of worship environment where you have not very technical savvy volunteers, you can set up the bell pack to operate the way you want it to operate and then lock it so nobody can mistakenly hit a button and cause the entire show to go down and have to be brought back up again, right, Art?
Yeah.
It operates just like the 900M does, and 900 megahertz and 2.4 gigahertz. The MicroCom M, CE compliant, as well as legal in Australia and New Zealand, and its special mode for there. It's encrypted. Digital frequency hopping spread spectrum. Again, a proprietary hopping sequence. Simple RF setup. Once again, it's very easy to use, very easy to get running and rolling there. You don't have to have a degree in RF. This particular device is IP67 rated, so it's rated from dust, complete protection, and also from immersion in water, up to 1 meter for 30 minutes. Now, mind you, I don't recommend you go swimming with this, but if you get, if you're working in a marine park and, you get splashed with water, this device is going to handle all of that. It can't fall inadvertently into water. It's got a very nice, highly comprehensive, high resolution OLED screen to give you a lot of information to look at in one easy view. This particular unit has a field replaceable battery. It's got a 12-hour battery life, and it takes about 3.5 hours to charge that back up via USB when it's completely dead. It has a very nice optional drop-in charger, much like our drop-in charger for CrewCom. And the batteries and the belt packs themselves all charge at the same time. It takes about 6.5 hours. So, you'll want to finish your day off and put your batteries and your belt packs in the charging station and go home. And when you come back in the morning, everything will be charged up and ready to roll for you to do your job. And this has, again, the LED indicators give you login status, battery status. And the menu settings are all set from the mode button, where you're going to set what group you're going to address and work within your mode, your ID mode, which if you're a master belt pack, or if you're a listen only, or a shared. Your side tone can be adjusted, mic gain, output level. And then here's an interesting feature that you should be made clearly aware of: the A, B, on or off. I can turn off the B channel. So once again, if I have a volunteer or a technically challenged person that can't flip back and forth, I can make the belt pack be able to just do a single function for that user, so they don't have to worry about anything other than doing their job. They don't have to worry about the belt pack. You can set it up for them to be set to channel A or channel B, and then you don't have to get confused or deal with anything else. The security mode allows you to basically lock the system out from being able to, again, the buttons on the unit, as well as where you're logging into. The operation modes we have are Tenu, which are seen there in the screen. If you look really closely, you can see Tenu in the corner there on this screen. That's a 10 user setup, and then there's the 5 user. Button lock, talk mode, channel, it's all there within that feature. So when you lock the buttons, you can talk, it locks talk mode and channel, right?
Mark, we do have one question, which is, does the XR drop-in charger also work for the MicroCom M?
It does not. It is specific to the MicroCom XR system. The MicroCom M is only going to be charged off of the USB brick or any off-the-shelf USB charging device that you'd use for your cell phones.
And Mark, I'll also mention we do sell a 5 USB charger for the MicroCom M. So essentially, you can charge all 5 of them at the same time if you have a system of 5, or you can get multiples of these, whatever. But this is an option here, like a little brick that gives you 5 USBs. Okay, Mark, thanks for covering that. We're going to continue on, and we're going to go dive into a little bit more about some of the operational aspects of both the M and the XR. Mark did mention, and you saw on his slides, that there's a 10U mode and a 5U mode. I'm going to try to explain the differences between those. On the screen here, you can see that we have 10 packs, and in the 10U mode, and it displays, and even though I have it on the screen there, but you can kind of see it on the screen here of the actual pack. It's maybe a little bit fuzzy, but anyhow, down at the bottom right corner, it does say 10U, and there is a way to change that mode between the 10U and the 5U mode. So let's talk a little bit about the 10U mode. The 10U mode gives you, because of the 10U means 10 users, so you can have up to 10 full duplex users. So that's a master, and then 9 other units, 01 through 09, are set up as your full duplex users. We also call this a normal range mode. To give you an idea of some of the range, you're talking at about, for 900 meg, you're talking about an 800-foot range, 240 meters, and at 2.4 is about 450 feet, or about 137 meters. So the range is what we call normal range, and we'll talk about range as well to kind of let you see the difference between normal range and extended range. Now, as we mentioned earlier, the XR adds the ability to do what's called shared operation, and with shared operation, you have an unlimited number of shared users, and then 9 full duplex users. And I'm going to explain that in a little more detail so you understand what the shared user thing is all about. But you still have all your unlimited listen-only users as well. Now, keep in mind, they all have to be in that same mode in order to operate together. So everybody on that system would be in a 10U mode. So then beyond the 10U mode, we have a 5-user mode. So if you need extended range, because typically the way the system is going to come out of the box, it's going to come in a 10U mode. So give you the maximum number of users, because we feel that's probably the most common need that people are going to need with XR is more users. But we do have this 5-user mode. So if range is of importance to you, with the 5U mode, you can now have up to 5 full duplex users, and you get basically a 25% increase in your range. So we went from about 800 feet to about 1,000 feet in the 900 meg, and same thing on the 2.4. Actually, I take that back. We'll talk about it later. 2.4 does not have the extended range mode. But then also the shared operation, which again is only for XR. You still have a limited number of shared users, but then you have 4 full duplex users and then the 1 set of shared users, or you can have unlimited listen-only users. So let's talk a little bit about those modes of operation, the master and the shared and so forth. As we've been kind of hammering home is, as we mentioned, there's no base station with the system. One system, or one pack rather, has to be set up as a master. You go into the menu, and with XR, you set that user as an M, and that makes that that particular pack the master pack. If you're using MicroCom M, actually you set that user as 00. It's the same thing, just a little different designation. We tried to keep everything alphanumeric on the XR because of the display. Once again, the master, once it gets set as a master, that generates the system beacon. So again, you have to stay within range of that master. Then you can have in the 5U mode or extended range mode, you set up your full duplex users. In this case, we're using 01, 02, 03, and 04. These are the ones here. And keep in mind, these are all full duplex paths. So to explain the key here, there is full duplex communication, hands-free, no need to key up, communication between all 5 packs. Okay, so that will give you a total of 5. Then you can have unlimited number of listen only. So in addition to those 5 full duplex users in the 5U mode, you also have unlimited number of listen only. So listen only, obviously the people using listen only packs won't be able to talk to the system or anybody else on the system. And their user ID is simply set to L. So anybody you want to be listen only, you just go through their menu, set them as L, and off they go, and they'll be able to listen. And if they're set up for channel A and channel B, they'll be able to listen on channel A or channel B, depending on what you want to do with your system. So no talk capabilities. So shared mode, so this is the new one. Shared mode actually really expands the XR system quite well, I mean, to a large number of users. As you can see here, if you have a lot of listen-only users and shared users, your system actually can become fairly large. Now, the way the shared user worked, it's basically taking up one of the slots. In this case, I'm taking up of your packs, unlimited number, to S. And what it does is it takes that last user or last slot on the system and of course reduces the number of full duplex users by 1. However, any one of those unlimited number of shared users can press their talk button and talk on that available talk path, and it is full duplex. Now, one of the things it does do, though, it makes it momentary, so that they hold down the talk button, say what they need to say, they'll release the talk button, and now that basically frees that slot back up for another user to come in. So let's say somebody's talking on that shared user, and somebody else comes along that's set up as a shared user and they press talk, they're going to get a couple of beeps that says that it's busy, that you're going to have to wait until that person quits talking. But if you have a lot of users that don't do that much talking but really need to talk, and just in case of an emergency or something like that, that allows that shared user slot to be used for that application. So it makes it much more flexible and adds you a lot more users to the system.
All right, we did have a question come up that I want to address before we get a little bit further.
Yeah.
The question is the range a radius from the master or a maximum gap between the furthest distance? Maybe you can get a little more detail into the timing range.
Yeah, actually, if we can hold on to that, when I get into the range discussions, we can bring that back up. If for some reason I happen to forget about it, please remind me. But I got it. Is the range the radius from the master or the max gap between the furthest devices? Okay. So we are going to talk about range more specifically, and I will answer that question. So as a quick comparison, I'm not going to sit here and go through every detail on this chart. Once again, you have this available to you as a PDF, so if you want to get into more details, but it's really just to point out some of the major differences between the M and the XR. And it really comes down to what your application is. You may need an M for a certain application, which is a single channel, which is fine. And for a fairly small number of users, and you have a small budget, MicroCom M is perfect for that. You want to step up to the next level, XR gives you all the things that we've been talking about, the extended range mode, 2 channels, A or B, and more battery life, different functionalities, shared users, and so forth. So one of the other things we haven't really talked about is price. And we do want to kind of mention, so you get an idea of where this falls in a price point standpoint. It's a very affordable system. As you can see here, if you look at the pack only list price, that is the price just for the pack by itself. Okay, so no headset, just the pack and its accessories. So as you can see, MicroCom M is very affordable, $379 just for the pack. MicroCom XR is $749, also affordable, just for the pack. I put an average per user list price here, and that's really just giving you an idea of what it would be with the headset. I mean, headset prices range from about $100 all the way up to about $350, depending on the headsets. And Mark's going to give more detail about the headsets. But on an average, if you took an average price of all our headsets, you're still looking at $550 with a headset per user. And once again, you don't need a base station or anything else, so that gives you an idea. If you have X number of users, you just multiply that number by X. And then same with MicroCom XR, still very affordable at $920. Definitely on the lower end of the spectrum in terms of price versus performance. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the range thing. And this is where we're going to talk this is actually a Google map of where, actually I did some tests from my house. Essentially, I had my son and actually my wife both did some tests together. And essentially, just to kind of give you an idea of what it was, is I had the master basically located in my house, and then I had one of the other full duplex packs, let's say it was 01, and I got on my bike and I rode my bike and basically documented how far I could go. Now keep in mind, we're going from the inside of a structure, which is wood and brick, not a whole lot of steel going on in my house, but anyhow, wood and brick, and also some terrain. There is the way I actually went. If you look at the map up here, this is my house here, and basically rode my bike this direction, and it is going up a hill. So there is a hill, and this is a higher part of the hill. There are a lot of trees in between and a couple of houses, as you can see. But I'll kind of explain to you kind of what have I experienced so that you get a real idea of what range is. Now, of course, whenever you talk about range, whether it's wireless mics, in-ear monitors, wireless intercom, whatever, as you probably know, it's very environmentally dependent. Whether you're inside a building, outside a building, where you're located, interference sources, all kinds of different factors. So just keep that in mind. But this is just a real world example so you can see the actual ranges that I got from the system. So the first one you see on the top here is 900 meg, and this is all XR ranges. So remember, the 5-user mode is the extended range mode. So this is really an example of the difference between the extended range mode and the Tenu mode, so between 5U and XU. And as you can see here, it is, as I mentioned earlier, about a 20 to 25% increase in range, but actually pretty impressive going from inside a house to 1,024 feet away before, and this is really before it dropped out. So to kind of go back to answer the question about the beacon, really it comes down to how far you are away from the beacon. Now, if I were to continue going, what I would likely hear is I may hear a little bit of breakup in the audio, but I still have a connection back to the beacon. So it really comes down to that beacon. So you will still get some communication. You may hear a little bit of dropout. You maybe heard digital dropout before. Basically, you get like a little bit of chop, but it's still understandable. But as soon as you go outside of that range of the beacon, in the case of XR, you'll hear 3 beeps and you'll actually completely log out and you won't hear anything until you go back into range and pick it up from there. So let's say I had another pack completely on the other opposite side of my house. Really what it's going to come down to is how the signal is between that master and the other pack. So as long as he's within range of that beacon and I'm within range of that beacon, then it starts to become and it can, hopefully this is answering your question, then it does take into account the fact the distance between myself and that other pack, because the audio is not going through the master and then being repeated and then sent out to the other pack. So it does become a factor, and that's why we talked about centrally locating the master as much as possible. So there is some factor to keep in mind when you are talking about the distances between the packs themselves and not between the pack and the master. So hopefully that answers the question. If it doesn't, chime back in and we'll try to help you understand that a little better. So anyhow, that's with the XR. Then I switched over to 2.4, and as expected, 2.4 actually did pretty well. But keep in mind, 2.4 is a much higher frequency. It also has the properties of a much more directional signal, much more line of sight. So, but I was able to get about, in this case, 413 feet from the initial location where the master was located. So this, of course, and you'll see another example we've got of inside of a theater, which is actually probably even more real world, because in 2.4 actually performs a little better on the inside of a structure. But anyhow, but as you can see here, it's very much line of sight dependent. And of course, body absorption was a big thing. I noticed that if I were to put my body in between the two packs, then that actually made a difference quite a bit, more so on the 2.4 than it did with the 900. But that was to be expected. Then I switched over to the MicroCom M, and as you can see here, the 900 range of MicroCom M, as you can see, as we expected as well, is less than that of XR, but range is still good, still 534 feet, which is usually plenty enough for any real-world application that's out there. And then 2.4, as expected, didn't go quite as far, but again, it's very line of sight dependent, and also has high body absorption as well. So those are some real world examples of that. So if, Gary, do we have another question before we move on? And then we're gonna do the poll before we do that.
Yes. Hold on one second, here we go. So the range question, and then is there an adapter, dual 3.5mm cable to the XLR for the master pack to existing wired comm system?
Gary, I'll let you answer that one.
Okay, we are in development for the XR for an IO connection that will allow you to interface to a standard analog line level IO. The box is in development. I don't have a release date on it, but hopefully we'll have that before too long.
Okay. All right, so before I hand it back to Mark, we're gonna do a couple of quick polls so we can kind of get an idea. We're gonna jump into more application specific part of the presentation. So I'm gonna ask a couple of questions, and hopefully everybody can answer them, and we'll get an idea of kind of, let's see who's on the webinar. The first one, which I will launch. All right. Is what is currently your primary form of intercom communication? So we'll let everybody respond to that. We'll wait a couple of minutes, get everybody a chance to chime in on that. And then what I'll do is I'll close that out, and then we will, I'll share the responses so we can kind of get an idea of what people are using out there. Okay, give it another about 10 seconds or so, and then we will move on. Okay, we'll go ahead and close this poll, and let me share the results. All right, looks like a lot of people using wired intercom. So this is great. We're happy to have you on the webinar, because we think we have a great solution that maybe even, depending on your application, get you completely off of wire. We've had a lot of people, at least I know personally, we get a lot of requests for people who just want to get away from wired intercom altogether and just go all wireless, and that's definitely a possibility. And as Gary mentioned, we are, of course, thinking about the ability to interface into wired as well. All right, so let me close that one out, and let's go back to the PowerPoint. And just a second, Mark, I will give you control. And Mark, you're set to go.
Excellent. Hey, I'm back. How are you all? So we're going to talk about some applications here, and I have control. I hope I have control.
You should.
Nope, it's doing that thing. Got it. Okay, so I go there.
There you go.
Fantastic. Thank you for your patience. So we thought about several different vertical markets or places and applications that these products would work well in and are already working well in. And right now, the house of worship place of business and marketing and market and such is really embracing the MicroCom M for its ease of use. It's does the job that they need done. They don't really need anything really elaborate. A lot of them don't need multiple channel systems, and there's no need for a base station, so it's very simple to get the system put together. And the versatility of it makes it very appealing to them, as well as the headset, which I'm going to be talking about the headsets later on. But one of the things I'd like to always drive home about the MicroCom systems and what Pliant's doing and how we're approaching this is that we're offering high-level professional grade headsets with a cost-effective, ease of operation system. And you know, the headset is probably the most important part of this system here. That's what you're listening to. The RF and all of those other things are great, and it's got to be able to communicate there. But that headset really sets this aside from a lot of the other products in this price point. Some of their headsets leave a little bit to be desired. The standard USB powering capabilities is easy for a lot of people to use in this particular market, and it's portable, small, easy to use. It's just, again, ease of use is a bullet that's worth mentioning over and over again. And you can very simply walk into a room and start doing a job. It's not a big elaborate setup process. And it's budget friendly, which is very important, especially nowadays for houses of worship. And again, you have the option, if you need a lot of users, you can go with the XR. If you have a large facility with a lot of areas that need to be covered, so you need extended range and better propagation, the XR and its extended range mode may be an excellent choice for that. But if you only need 5 users and you're going to be pretty close together, the MicroCom M would work excellent in that application also. And here we have a nice little overhead view of a medium size, or we're calling it a small house of worship. And we're thinking about 3 users in here, maybe 2 cameras and a technician who's going to be calling the camera shots. And, you know, things to consider here are, of course, where the packs are located, as we've mentioned before, if you're all within the beacon of the master, and if the other packs are within range of each other for audio considerations, they'll operate with no problems. And then, you know, as Art mentioned before, environmental, your walls, your ceiling, which band you're choosing. If you're inside of a lead-lined bunker, you're not going to get RF out of that. It's you can't cheat physics. But if you're in a decently modernly built site and it has an open plenum, the ceiling in this particular facility, you may get coverage into this classroom area in the fellowship hall corridor, as well as the other corridor there outside of the sanctuary. So it really is dependent upon the walls and the ceilings and what you're dealing with there. The numbers of channels, you know, if you need only 1 channel, MicroCom M is perfect for that. If you need a dual channel system, MicroCom XR would be your best choice for that. If you need anything more than 2 channels and more coverage, then we'll need to start talking about CrewCom perhaps. And that'll be coming up in some seminars, webinars that we're having down the road. And your budget, of course, you know, what are you willing to invest into this system? There we go. So, did I skip one?
Yes.
Of course I did. Medium, there we go. Is it going to stay there? So now we're going to talk about a medium facility And we've got a lead tech back there in the back of the, behind the platform of the sanctuary. And then you got 3 camera operators at the very back of the sanctuary and a production system over near the door. Again, this is a very feasible operation for MicroCom XR. We're well within the range of what that system's capable of doing. And again, we have coverage considerations, pack locations, environmental considerations, and, are you choosing 2.4 or 900? And your numbers of channels, how many channels of communication you need, or party lines you need to have, or conferences as we refer to them in CrewCom. If you need wired connectivity with that plug-in device that we have in development, this could also allow you to wire up an XR system into an pre-existing wired intercom system. And your budget, again, you're getting that. We're going to be discussing some numbers on the systems later on in the presentation, but these are very affordable systems that really, for what they're capable of doing, you're not going to be able to get anything close to this feature set in this price range with the functionality and performance. And then we go to a very large facility here, and this one's definitely going to be an XR candidate. You definitely need to consider where people are going to be. Again, the environmental aspect is very important. The numbers of channels are what you're going to need to discuss and consider with your end users, or as an end user yourself, you need to consider, well, what do I need to do and where do I want to go, maybe in a year or 2 year upgradability. With all of the different types of modes that are available with XR, you could operate it in a 10 user mode one day and then change it to a shared mode the following day, and then have another set of people as listen only personnel the day after that. So there's a lot more options available with XR that definitely make it worth the additional investments into the product. And again, wired connectivity, your work groups, and your budget are concerns when you're thinking about these systems. As with any AV system, what do you need to invest into it? And
all right. Thanks, Mark. We are going to jump over to theater, although I failed to do the second poll, so we're going to do that right now. And so time for another poll, another quick poll. And this one's a little bit different, a little more about application. What organization application are you most involved or interested in? So if everybody could please answer that one, we'll get an idea of kind of what everybody's using wireless intercom for, or intercom in general. Looks like we got a good mix of dealers and reps out there. Great. A lot of live event corporate. All right. We got 0 theater and 0 house of worship, which is what we're covering in this presentation, which is interesting, but that's okay. That's good to know. There's a lot of crossover, obviously, in the way this works. But anyhow, let me share the actual results so everybody can kind of see where we are. And as you can see there, we got a lot of live event corporate people, and as well as dealer reps. But anyhow, let me go ahead and hide this, and we're going to move on to talk a little bit about theater. Now I'm going to talk, as Mark did, give some examples of possible uses in a theater application. But in addition to that, I'm also going to share some testing that we actually did here in Auburn, Alabama. So that's actually, I think, going to be very useful too, because you get to see exactly how it works inside of a real environment. So anyhow, as Mark mentioned, one of the great things about the system is, and we really tout the fact that it's very simple. So for a non-technical user, whether it's a student or volunteer or whatever, it makes it very easy for that user. So that, in combination with what Mark's going to talk about a little bit later, our SmartBoom headset, which allows you to flip up the mic to mute the microphone, makes it very easy, very user-friendly. So keep that in mind when you're looking at the MicroCom system. Also very versatile, as Mark has mentioned. So the different types of headsets, you can do USB powering, or you can power off of AC current. Mark, yes?
I wanted to chime in and really drive something home, especially since we had a couple people come back as rental houses. You know, when you purchase a SKU, an XR belt pack or an M belt pack, of course, only the M belt packs work together and only the XR belt packs work together. But you can have those belt packs sitting in your rental stock, and then you can configure your systems as needed. So you can own 30 belt packs and put together 3 10-user belt systems or etc. So it's really nice that if one belt pack needs to be set to master, it's all done by a software, where a lot of our competitors, it's a hardware-based decision that's made as to what belt pack is the master and what belt pack is a listen belt pack. So I just wanted to make sure that that was made clear for our rental house folks that have joined us today.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mark. Actually, I didn't even see that 8% down there, but glad you brought it up. Other thing, as Mark mentioned, is it's a very expandable system. So based on the production that you're doing, you could have as little as 2 users and as many as unlimited number of listen only or shared users with the XR system. So very flexible. It's also budget friendly. We keep hammering that home, but that is the case. For what it does, actually, the price it's a great value. Again, we do have the 2 systems, and they do have different feature sets depending on your application. The biggest, probably to me, is the dual channel workflow of the XR, where the MicroCom M is a single channel, and of course coverage areas also come into to play when you're talking about the 2 different systems, and many other things. So things to consider. Pack location is a big thing to consider. This is just an example of how you might see a MicroCom XR system deployed in a theater. As you can see here, we have packs all over the place. And with this particular example, as an example, you may have to, we talked about the importance of having the master centrally located. In this case, it might be the best to have the spotlight operator set up as your master. The master doesn't necessarily mean it's the most important person on the system. It really comes down to where are you going to get your maximum coverage. In this case, it may be the spotlight operator because he's more than likely going to be stationary for the most part, at least during the show. It may be somebody else depending on the application. So of course you got to consider the number of channels, how many work groups you want to have. You could have just your lights on one group, your tech director and stage manager on another group. Really depends on how you want to operate the system. So let's talk, in this case, specifically about some real-world testing that we did. We're lucky enough to be here in Auburn, Alabama, where they just built a brand new performing arts center, the Gouge Performing Arts Center. It's an 85,000 square foot building. I'll preface this whole thing by saying they do own a CrewCom system, and I'll explain why they ended up buying a CrewCom system. But this particular example is really just to kind of show the range of the system within this type of application. The seating area within the actual theater itself is a 1,202 person seating area. They also do have an outdoor amphitheater, which is over here on the side of the building, which could be used if we wanted to have a MicroCom system just for that part of the building outside. We could certainly do something like that. So just give you an idea of what the facility looked like. And then here's a blueprint of the actual facility. You can kind of get some distances. In just a second here, I'm going to actually show you range distances so you can get an idea of how far we actually were from each other. But also I'm going to step you through what we actually tested. We actually did 2 tests in the 5-user mode, which is the extended range mode. And we first of all started out and put the master on the stage. Okay, now the person who was the master, he wasn't in a fixed position. He was just basically wandering around the stage area to kind of get an idea of, if we were to have an application where somebody were to be, let's say, a stage manager, and you gave them the master, how would that operate? Then we moved the master to a control room. There's actually a control room under the balcony. This here is actually a balcony, and this room is actually underneath the balcony. And that's kind of important to remember when we talk about range. But anyhow, we put the master there. That particular user would be stationary in that room for the entire portion of the performance. So that's a little more of a fixed location. So we did both. We're going to give you some ideas of how that worked. Now, when we did that, we did actually perform better with the master in that control room. Gary, did we have a question?
Yeah, we did. I came up a minute ago, but before we go too much further,
Sure.
if you can do a little bit of an explanation of the difference between groups and channels and the ID numbers, I think clarifying that whole area would be helpful.
Okay. Yeah. Just without backing up to the actual slide itself, think of a group really not being associated so much with the audio channel or the audio party line or audio communication, but the group is really more for setting up packs so that they can operate really as an autonomous system all by itself. Now, of course, it does include the audio communication part of it, but it's really to set up the RF. Think about coordinating two wireless microphones. You don't want them to step on each other, so you have to consider, you know, all the harmonics and things like that. In the case of our system, it's actually frequency hopping spread spectrum. So what you're doing is you're coordinating that frequency hopping so two autonomous systems don't step on each other in the same RF space. So pick this theater, for example. We could have two separate groups, okay? And the group takes, let's say it's two XR systems. We have a group of 5 on one system and a group of 4 on the other system. We would put them on different group numbers, 10 group numbers apart. Now, both of those systems can operate in that same RF environment. They won't step on each other and they won't cause range deficiencies and so forth and actual problems from an RF perspective. Now, the other part of that is the channel. I'm going to assume you mean by channel, or let me explain. When we talk about channel, we're talking about, in the case of XR, it's 2 channels. So you have a channel A and a channel B. So you could have, let's say, lighting on one channel. So it's a communication channel for lighting, and let's say audio on the other channel. So now a user, if it's their pack is set up that way, can switch back and forth. Let's say you're a stage manager and you need to switch between audio and lighting. You can switch on your pack, you can go between A and B. Or if you have a pack that somebody only is part of the audio group, or audio, sorry, channels, they can only have the A or the B, depending on how you set it up. So hopefully that makes it a little more clear, but keep in mind that groups are really for setting up what I would call work groups. So they're completely autonomous systems that do not speak to each other from a communication standpoint, but are able to operate in the same RF environment. Okay, you think we got it on that one, Gary?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. All right, so talking a little bit specific about the actual range of this system. Now, keep in mind, this is a pretty large facility. The other thing to keep in mind, and really important, is you can kind of see the X's around the edges here. This is actually an air gap. This is acoustically isolated, and it's actually a building within a building. So we've got that to deal with. And then we've also got the fact that, especially back here in the back in the stage area, there's a lot of steel, and the walls themselves are concrete with steel. So you'll see what effect that has. But to give you an idea of the range, in 900 meg, we did both 900 and 2.4, we tested both. As you can see here, we got approximately 275 feet from the furthest pack away between the 2 packs. So that means both of these were still in range of the master. They were still getting that master beacon, but they were still able to communicate with each other at 275 feet apart. And this is outside of the actual theater area. We were actually kind of surprised that we were able to get that far outside of the theater, because that person walked out the door here. Hopefully you can see my mouse. And they walked all the way out. This is the lobby area here, took a right over by the concession stand. And this is where they ended up. And we were still able to communicate with that person out in the lobby. Now, keep in mind, this is 900 meg, so penetration through walls is going to be better. But the thing that really helped out here is the doors, because the doors are all made out of wood. So we suspect that RF was traveling out that way and getting its way out through the doors and allowing some coverage out in the lobby. Okay, so that's really good range. Basically, we were able to cover this entire theater inside and even a little bit outside in the lobby area between those packs. Now you look at 2.4, actually it was surprisingly good. we were still able to get outside of the hall itself because of the wooden doors. But once you turn the corner, essentially it would drop out. And as we've mentioned earlier, 2.4 is much more directional, and also 2.4 doesn't go around corners very well. So anyhow, once we turn the corner here, if we went either right or left, that person would drop off of the system because they're basically losing the beacon because there's so much in between the beacon and the actual pack itself. Now, keep in mind, when that pack went out of range, everybody else was still communicating. It did not affect everybody else. It just affected that pack that went out of the range of the beacon. And as I mentioned, because of all the steel and the air gap between the actual building within a building, we weren't able to get any real coverage outside of the in the backstage area and on either side of the stage. And that's really because of the construction. We were talking about how important that is to really know what the construction is. This is the reason why they use MicroCom. And not to get too much into MicroCom, but with MicroCom, you're able to put transceivers in multiple locations. In their case, they have one in the catwalk above the central area. They have one backstage, and they actually have one over in the tech area over here in the side hall. And they're able to basically roam between all those different areas. So they needed coverage backstage. But in most medium to smaller applications, you're not going to have these big steel walls with the air gap, and you're still able to cover it, most of the facility without any issues. So that's a real world example. Talk a little bit about event. Mark actually jumped into this a little bit, which is great. But a couple of things to mention when you're talking about doing events, or if you're a rental company. As Mark mentioned, there's basically one pack that you have to inventory. Any pack can be a master, any pack can be set up as a listen-only, shared, whatever. It's great for putting together systems quickly, and it's also very cost-effective. It's easy to just pick up, make a system, send it out, and go. All the selection of headsets makes it very flexible for different applications. They're pretty small, so from a storage standpoint, and that's actually a big thing, so it doesn't take up much storage area. We do make accessory cases and things like that, so if you want to, chargers, makes it a lot easier for events and rental type of companies. So you're a wedding videographer, you run a drone, even if it's just a small system like that, a spotter for a drone application, perfect for something like that. Nice and small, hands-free operation. Okay, I'm going to hand it back over for the last section of the presentation, which is headsets. And Mark, if you can take it away.
And I'm back. Hey, thank you all for sticking around this long. We're winding down here with the presentation. I'm going to dive right in here. As I mentioned before, we have three models of professional, high-grade, high-quality headsets. These are the same types of headsets that we offer for MicroCom that are also offered for MicroCom. But in addition to those headsets, we have some specialty headsets that are down here below. We have a in-ear Jabra type headset, which is, I don't know how many of you guys remember the old Jabra earbuds that we used to use with our cell phones back when dinosaurs roamed the earth. But we have one of those here, which is a very nice low profile. It's not easy to see headset that a wedding videographer could use, and it would really make a lot of good sense. And then we also have the curly clear tube Secret Service type headset, I like to refer to it as. It comes with a lavalier microphone that you can clip into your collar and then put the earbud into your ear, and you're doing your job. Now these terminate to the gooseneck one terminates to single 3.5 millimeter, and then the curly Q one as well as the professional headsets are dual mini 1/8 inch or 3.5 millimeter termination. So we're going to talk about the three Pliant headsets across the top here are professional ones that we also use for MicroCom. They have SmartBoom technology. So with these latched belt packs, you simply take your gooseneck boom arm, put it up to 12 o'clock on your head, and your mic is off, and you're off the mic. So it can make communication and your workflow very, very easy. And again, the headset is something that we all work with the most, the belt pack. They turn it on and they can use the microphone boom to do the on and off. Yes, Gary.
Hi, I wanted to take a minute to make a point here for our audience. As Mark was explaining, these are the same headsets, but with a different termination that we have available for CrewCom. And they're quite popular, and it's quite good. So the professional headset is actually available beyond the double termination, unterminated, a 4-pin XLR female, and a 5-pin male for the older RPS tele style, which there's quite a bit of. And we also make a little adapter that allows you to go from the 5-pin to a 4-pin setup. The reason I wanted to talk about this a little bit is because when we are now in a situation of dealing with a pandemic and viruses, and people are very sensitive to using somebody else's device. And so if you have a situation where you have multiple people on a system, I think that for our end users and our dealer partners, they're going to see people who are going to want their own headset now, where before they just took one out of the box and used it. And so we've had a number of dealers who've had some very good success with both selling individuals who might not normally own their own headset, the headsets, and frequently they've been buying them as a 5-pin XLR and also adding a 4-pin adapter. So they're very versatile. If they're going to different facilities, they have the ability to connect to almost anything. So as you're looking at your applications, take a good look at the needs of the people. For the larger broadcasters, even if they still will continue to give out their own headsets, they'll need time to get them sanitized and bring them out. So I think you're going to see quite a bit of people looking to purchase their own headsets, where you know, traditionally they just kind of walked in and were handed one. Okay, Mark, yours.
Thank you, Gary. Excellent information. And also to support further, all of the windscreens and ear pads that are on these headsets are available as spare parts. And we also have a very comprehensive sanitizing cleaning document online that allows you to steps you through what is a good way to clean and sanitize these headsets so multiple people can use them without risking the spread of any kind of a disease. And I was muted for all of that, I believe, no?
Nope,
Yes.
you were good.
Okay. All right, and on to the next slide. Here we are. So the specialty headsets, we have an in-ear headset. Both of them are in-ear for that matter. You've got an earbud here that's on the curly-Q clear tube with the lavalier. And then we have the Jabra style gooseneck earbud headset. And they're both available with a push-to-talk feature. So you can have a button on there that you push, you talk, you take your hand off of it, your mic is silent. And it really works very, very well with both the XR and the M system. And once again, these are good for security applications and weddingographer, videographer applications. Professional headsets, our Pliant headsets. Here, what we're going to try to cover in these next few slides is where we're kind of envisioning these headsets to go and what we think would be a good way to select them. You know, do you want on-ear type of a headset that you're going to wear for 8 to 12 hours a day? Do you want an over-ear single because you're in a loud environment, but you still need to have an awareness of what's going on around you? Or do you want a dual that isolates you from your environment? Or do you need to be more discreet with your headset so you're not distracting to the people who are attending whatever event you're working in? And with that being said, you know, the SB11, our little lightweight guy, we envision that going into houses, worship, theaters, video production, and schools all day long. And especially in the school and the theater environment and houses of worship, you know, it's available. It comes with an extra ear pad, and you can get mic pads for it. And the foam of that headset can be washed and dried out for sanitation purposes. And again, those instructions are on our website for you to review. And then we go into our large over-the-ear ones. These offer a significant amount of acoustic isolation from where you're dealing with. So for loud events, live rock concerts, other, event production where you have a crowd, screaming in the background, video production and house of worship, these headsets are ideally suited for those applications. And as Gary mentioned, we're showing these headsets terminated with the dual mini 1/8 inch. They are available in male XLR 5-pin and female 4-pin XLR, as well as unterminated. So you can get clever and put whatever kind of connection on there you want to. And then we start talking about what we like to discuss as our Pliant specialty headsets, the earbuds, the ones that are a little more discreet that you can hide from if you're doing a wedding or if you're involved in a fashion show and you just sort of want to be discreetly standing in the background but maintain communication and not be distracting. These are excellent choices for that. And then when you add the push to talk feature in there, that really starts to open it up for your volunteer friendly, low technical, user friendly headset that they just push this nice sized button and be able to talk and take their hand off of it and be off mic and allow the rest of the conferences and conversations to continue without any kind of distractions.
Thanks, Mark.
You're welcome, Mark.
And just for everybody's, based on the last question we saw, Mark will be selling his shirt on eBay shortly after this webinar. We had somebody ask how they can get one of those sweet shirts like Mark is wearing.
Mark's a good guy. He'll give you the shirt off his back.
Right, literally.
You all know my phone number, and we can have a discussion regarding the terms that come to
I'd actually want to take a second for the audience because there's a really important thing here that I think we've got a huge opportunity to help a lot of people, especially if they're in production areas. It's fairly common during productions for people to kind of whisper in somebody's ear about a cue or something going on during a church service or almost any kind of event. I think now with social distancing, that's a bit of a problem. What we do have is the ability now to take one of these, one of the light inexpensive headsets, pair it with a MicroCom M, and be able to whisper in somebody's ear from 10 feet away. And I think that's a huge benefit for people, to be able to enable, safe distance and still be able to get some good communication. So again, at a very low user cost, very simple to operate, enough people on, we can still be under the shadows and whisper around and not have to be in danger or break the budget.
Great point. A couple of quick slides left, and then we'll be done. We've mentioned 2.4 several times throughout the presentation, and just keep in mind that if you're going to be using any of our systems outside of the U.S., with the exception of other parts of North America as well as Oceania, the only way to go in terms of MicroCom is 2.4. So there are some considerations that you do have to keep in mind. As you saw, like for instance, in the theater application, we were able to cover the entire theater at 2.4, but you do have to consider if there are other Wi-Fi sources out there, lighting controllers, etc. The system is designed to coexist with Wi-Fi. It does not use Wi-Fi signals for transmission and reception. It is its own proprietary system that coexists with Wi-Fi, but you still have to keep that in mind and stay at least 30 feet away from any type of hotspots and so forth. So they can coexist, and keep in mind it's primarily line of sight. But to give you kind of a comparison between 900 meg and 2.4, and we do typically lead, at least in the US and North America, with 900 meg because of the propagation and so forth, and the fact that there's hardly any sources in the 900 meg band. But just a quick comparison of the two. As you can see here, the band does not affect the number of users. So whether you're XR or M, this doesn't affect the number of full duplex users or listen onlys or whatever. That has nothing to do with it. Keep in mind, both bands are unlicensed. The 900 is outside the Wi-Fi band, but of course the 2.4 is within the band, but it can coexist. 900 meg is better for going around corners or propagating through solids. And as we saw, the average ranges are different between 900 meg and 2.4. So really just kind of wanted to point that out before we wrap things up. So with that, though, we go to our final slide, and I don't see any additional questions out there, but if you do happen to have any, of course, you can reach out to any one of us after the fact. I believe our emails were on the presentation header page. And also, as Gary mentioned, this has been recorded, so you'll be able to go in and watch everything again if you want to, or forward it to somebody so they can watch it. So anyhow, with that, I'll pass it back to Gary, let him take us out, and hopefully everybody stays safe. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Art. Great presentation. We appreciate everybody joining us, and it looks like most people have stayed with us through the entire session. If you have any people in your organization who missed it, we will be repeating this tomorrow at what time, Art?
4 o'clock Central Time.
4 o'clock Central Time. And this will be recorded. And this is the first of a number of seminars we'll be doing. In a couple of weeks, we will be in with our MicroCom, and that's going to be a full-on immersive training on the actual application on how to use the CrewWare. And there'll be more after that. If you have any questions, feel free to email us, but thank you very much for joining. Okay.
Alrighty. I will end